Let me kindly share the information that this event will be recorded. So the machine was faster than me. By staying in the meeting, we assume that you agree with the data protection guidelines and you will stay with us. Further, for your information, the event will be translated into Ukrainian. So kindly choose the language you prefer and please choose either Ukrainian or English, not original sound. You will find the language opportunities down with the 3 dots. In German, it's written mehr. In English, it should be more. Sorry, I have to say, I don't know how I have to say this in Ukrainian. We will have later breakout rooms. In these breakout rooms, we have no translation available, so there will be everything in English. My name is Stefan Müller. I'm from the Central Council of the German Sinti and Roma, and together with my colleague Sarah Reinke from the Society of the People, we will moderate this event today. I would like to welcome you to this exciting and for us very important event on national minorities, communities, and indigenous people in the recovery process of Ukraine. We have prepared this event in close cooperation with the North Azovian Greek community Kyiv, the youth agency of the Advocacy for Roma culture in Ukraine, ARCA, the Crimea media platform, the Society for Threatened Peoples, and the German Platform for the Reconstruction of Ukraine. Few words to the platform. The Platform for the Reconstruction in Ukraine is an initiative of the German government and aims to bring together stakeholders from local authorities, business, civil society, and academia in Germany with an interest in the reconstruction of Ukraine, so thereby making Germany's contribution more effective. A few words to the agenda today. After the welcome, we have a brief get to know each other, which will be followed by introductions to the situation of selected national minorities or communities and indigenous people in Ukraine. After this, there will be the possibility for question and answers. Then we would go into 3 parallel breakout rooms for peer-to-peer consultations with the 3 communities, and we will have 1 breakout room, 1 community. They will talk about your needs, and you could discuss how to include perspectives of each of the 3 present communities in the planning, implementation of your activities in Ukraine. And then we would come back together for a final session. We are very pleased to have Ms. Lea Moser with us today. She's a senior policy officer at the Task Force Ukraine at the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. Amongst other things, she's responsible for driving Germany's approach to the recovery of Ukraine, and she's currently preparing the Ukraine Recovery Conference. Ms. Moser, the floor would be yours.
Thank you very much, Stefan, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm very happy to welcome you all on behalf of BMZ, Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, and a special thanks to Stefan and the Central Council of German Sinti of Roma, but also to all other organizations who have organized this event today and for this initiative to address this important issue within the framework of the German Platform for the Reconstruction of Ukraine. From our side, from BMZ side, we really want to focus on an inclusive recovery and reconstruction process aligned with the Lugano principles to make sure that people are involved in the processes for the recovery and reconstruction process. In this regard, we believe that it's very important that the participation and inclusion of minorities and indigenous peoples is also considered in the recovery and reconstruction process. And I think it's very important that we also have the opportunity today to discuss this together, how everyone can support the involvement, the participation and inclusion of minorities and indigenous peoples in the recovery and reconstruction process, and how we can try to be more inclusive and really also work together with the different organizations that represent minorities and indigenous peoples to ensure that the recovery and reconstruction process is as inclusive as possible. I'll leave it at that because I think there are really experts here today to provide more ideas and inputs how to really make sure that this can also happen in practice. So I'll just hand over to all the colleagues who organized today's event to provide more details. Let me just one last remark. Also from the German Platform for Reconstruction of Ukraine, we really want to make sure that events like this can take place. So please also let us know if you have any interest in organizing similar events. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Ms. Moser. We are very happy to hear this, and our ears are wide open, and I'm sure we will get back to you on this. Before continuing, we would like to find out a little bit more about who is with us today. So we have prepared a couple of questions, actually 3 questions. The first question would be who is attending the event today for the first time, the event organized by the German Platform for the Reconstruction of Ukraine. Please give a thumbs up in the chat if this applies to you. The second question would be who is currently active in Ukraine? And please also react with a thumbs up if this applies to you. And this third question would be very interesting also for us to know, what is your motivation to take part today? Please just write a couple of, notes in the chat. Okay, we'll wait for a couple of minutes. I'm very happy to see that both is happening. There are new people that we could sort of motivate to come and join today. And also, I'm sure we have people in the room who are already very familiar with this kind of event in the framework of the platform. And it's wonderful to see that we have a lot of people who are really active in Ukraine, because we just hope to find also partners for our esteemed colleagues who represent the minorities and indigenous peoples today. And there's a wide variety of motivations. Yeah, you can see it also in the chat. So I'm very sure that we have like very high level discussions also in the breakup rooms. And this is just sort of a first round of getting to know each other and getting a first impression on who is with us today. I think you can keep writing, and we will have a look in the chat parallelly to our event here. Thank you so much. I would hand back to Stefan.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So we will now move to the point, introduction to the situation of selected national minorities, communities, and indigenous people in Ukraine. Before I will give the floor to our 3 esteemed colleagues, I will give a very brief overview on the situation of minorities and indigenous people in Ukraine. Ukraine is home to more than 100 national minorities and communities and 3 indigenous people. So it's a very diverse society. Members of the communities and of the indigenous people in Ukraine are victims of the full-scale invasion of Russia as much as members of the majority population. Crimean Tatars, Roma, Greeks, Hungarians, Koreans, Romanians, and many others are fighting at the front line, as Jews and Muslims are defending the country together with their Christian and atheist neighbors. So somehow, the full-scale invasion of Russia brought majority and communities of indigenous people closer together instead of dividing them. So as it looks like a little bit another miscalculation of Russia. On the other hand, some communities face racism and not all are accepted as an integral part of the society in Ukraine, despite the recognition of their contribution in defending the country. So both the diversity of Ukraine and the contribution of the members of these communities, indigenous people, in defending Ukraine, and in particular the specific challenges of the communities and indigenous people, are often overlooked. But these specific challenges they face, they have to be addressed to maintain a diverse Ukraine and to ensure a peaceful coexistence and diversity after the war. Meaning, when talking about humanitarian assistance or recovery and reconstruction programs, irrespective of the field, be it reconstruction of houses, infrastructure, be it the labor market, be it education, their needs and rights have to be respected too. We couldn't invite representatives of all of the more than 100 communities and the 3 indigenous people in Ukraine. I'm very glad that Mr. Leisler, representing the Council of the German minority in Ukraine, is also with us. But we are glad that we have 3 representatives with us who will give more detailed information. One woman representing the Crimean Tatars, one woman representing the Roma community, and one woman representing the North Azovian Greeks. All of them face different and additional challenges compared to the majority population. But all of them are also united in the fight for a diverse and a free Ukraine and against the Russian aggression. Before I pass the floor finally to our colleagues who will provide basic information on the 3 communities, I would like to ask you if you have questions, because we will have a question and answer session at the end. Please post these questions also in the chat if possible. It will help us to save time because we have a quite limited amount of time available. Put them in the chat and we will come back in the question and answer session to them. And now I pass the floor to our 3 colleagues. First, we have the honor and pleasure to listen to Ms. Elnara Nureyev-Veletova from the Crimea Media Platform. Then we will have Natalie Tumenko from the Youth Agency for the Advocacy of Roma Culture, ARCA. And finally, Ms. Olga Zubrikova from the North Azovian Greeks community in Kyiv. And with this, Elnara, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to start sharing my screen in a second. Let me know once you can see it. Okay, is it working? Perfect. Okay, now I need to go back because I shared the wrong slide. Hang on a second, technicalities and all that. Okay. Like everyone is okay, everything is okay now. Sorry. Yes. All right, so I'm gonna start with Crimean Tatars, as I'm the one who is representing this ethnic group. So just quick history excursus on who we are. Back before the annexation times, actually it was quite hard to explain to people where Ukraine was, and it was even harder to explain who are Crimean Tatars and why we are part of Ukraine, because Crimean Tatars is actually a Turkic ethnic group. We were formed during Crimean Khanate. We used to have our own statehood until Russia annexed it in 18th century. And since then, all the big problems of Crimean Tatars started because Russia started purging Crimean Tatars out of Crimea. And initially it was more of a passive, like forced deportation. And then in 1944, the real deportation happened, but I'm going to speak about it a little bit later. So as you can see, the names of the places in Crimea are originally Turkic. And when the Soviets, the first Russian Empire came, they started renaming the places in Crimea just to show that it's no longer actually like Crimean Khanate. And today, there are just a couple of place names that are left. And this is one of the biggest problems because we want original names back. So this is just main cities on the map that you can see. And here is an old map from 18th century that shows how it used to be, like what names there used to be. And again, with the Russian Empire, they started renaming the villages and so on. And with Soviets, it got even worse. And now, quickly, we're gonna see how the Crimean Tatar population had changed since the 18th century. So first, Crimean Tatars were the biggest ethnic group in Crimea. It was mostly almost 90%. And then with the first Russian annexation, Crimean Tatars population started slowly decreasing. And it was getting worse and worse. Many Crimean Tatars had to flee to Russia, to Bulgaria, to Romania. And then it was getting worse and worse, especially with the Crimean War, where Russia basically violated the Treaty of Kuchuk-Kainarja and just annexed Crimea for the first time. And then the worst thing happened in 1944 when Soviets deported Crimean Tatars, all of them mostly to Central Asia or to regions in Siberia. That's where my grandparents landed. That's where they met. That's where my mom was born. And the thing is, in 1944, most of the Crimean Tatars were recruited in the Soviet Red Army. So men were serving in the military, and the people that were deported were children, elderly people, women, and all of them were accused of collaboration with Nazis, and therefore the whole population of Crimean Tatars were sent somewhere else in the Soviet Union. And people from Russia, from different parts of Russia, were sent to Crimea. And now when people are saying that most of the population wanted Russia when the annexation happened, it is not really fair, because those people basically took Crimean Tatars' houses in 1944 and they occupied them, they still live in them, and they are originally Russians. Therefore, of course, they would want to be a part of Russia. But that's another story. So you probably you have heard of Crimean Tatar singer. I mean, she is ethnically Crimean Tatar and Armenian, and she's actually a Ukrainian singer, and she represented Ukraine back in 2016 with her 1944 song. And in 2022, when the war began, actually her song, it was pretty, like, we could relate to it. The lyrics were pretty much like on spot. When strangers are coming, they come to your house, they kill you all and say we're not guilty. So yeah, you can Google that in case you haven't seen it. So it's an amazing song that is like a call for humanity. So, and now speaking about the modern problems and challenges of Crimean Tatars, we can say that apart from the physical danger that Crimean Tatars are in, we have other problems as well. If we take into account that Crimea would not be simply destroyed or wiped, because this is the only heimat, the only homeland that Crimean Tatars have, and what Crimean Tatars long for quite some time. It's been our own statehood. And since the independence of Ukraine, Crimean Tatars were declaring that we want statehood within Ukraine, we want our own autonomy, and we used to be autonomous republic, but we didn't have enough rights. But this is another story. So the biggest win of Crimean Tatar diplomats was that the law on indigenous people of Ukraine was adopted back in 2021. Again, it is sad that Ukraine adopted this law when the annexation happened and Crimea was basically lost by Ukraine, but still it is a big win. And Ukraine therefore declared with this act that we consider Crimea as a part of our country, and Crimean Tatars are integral people to Ukraine. So yeah, this is one direction that we need to work in, that we need to have our own statehood. Second thing is freeing political prisoners. There are so many people, there are so many Crimean Tatars that are being imprisoned for no good reason. And even though many international communities, organizations are involved in helping the cases, still it is not enough. People are getting weird accusations by Russia and they end up in Russian prison. And another problem that Crimean Tatars are facing today is language preservation. I, as a Crimean Tatar, I do not speak my mother tongue. I can have a small talk, but I'm not very fluent in it. And again, this is the result of Crimean Tatars being deported and wiped out of the peninsula. So what we need here, we need to establish our own educational institutions, and we need to make sure that the original toponymy is brought back. And yeah, one of the ideas that me and my team, Crimean Public Media or Crimean Media Platform, we are working towards establishing Crimean Tatar Public Media, which is crucial because currently there are different initiatives, but there is no consolidated place where people can access information in Crimean Tatar as well. So yeah, of course, we will have English, and we already have English and Ukrainian version, but the idea is to make as much as possible to make the content in Crimean Tatar as well. So yeah, that is it for me. Thank you so much. I hope I didn't, I used my 7 minutes, right? Okay, I'm gonna now pass the word to Natalie.
Thank you so much, Elnara. Pleasure to see you all today. And I will start the presentation with welcoming words in Romani language. Tevan Bahtale, Zor Baht Sastimosa. And similar to Elnara, I would like to start with some historical introduction that you understand the background of Roma and how they came to Ukraine. Elnara, when I will be wanting you to change the slide, I will be saying this, okay? If
Sure.
you can go back again. Thank you so much. The first slide, Elnara. Thank you.
Okay, isn't this the first one? Oh, sorry.
Yep, dankeschön. The Roma people in Ukraine cannot be regarded as a homogeneous group because there is a significant diversity within the community, consisting of sub-ethnic groups scattered around the country that present different dialects of Romani language, cultural identities, religions, beliefs, localities, jobs, style of life that differentiate all the Roma communities in Ukraine. Highlighting the historical background, there are several theories on where the Roma people came from to Europe. The widely accepted theory put forth by Romani academics based on linguistic research, which shows that the migration of Roma started from Central India in 11th century and with its arrival to Europe via Persia, Armenia, Byzantine Empire in 15th century. For this regard, the first mentioning of Roma people on the territory of Ukraine was found as well in 15th century. Already from 18th century, Roma were subject of discrimination and forced assimilation laws in Austro-Hungarian Empire and Russian Empire that had Ukrainian contemporary territories under the control at that time. Rapidly increasing intensity of discrimination led to the Roma genocide during the World War II across Europe. The Roma were victims of concentration camps and mass shootings in case of Ukraine, based on their ethnic belonging. There is an estimation that between 20 to 72,000 of Roma people have been killed during the genocide on a territory of contemporary Ukraine. The process of Roma genocide recognition is still an ongoing process in many European countries, which is happening mostly due to the human rights movement of Roma activists. Ukraine, in this sense, was one of the first countries who accepted on national level 2nd of August as the Roma Genocide Remembrance Day. And if we can go to the second slide. Thank you. Despite of the fact that Roma communities is one of the biggest national minorities in Ukraine, they are still the least visible ones. The situation before the war showed that many integrated members of community avoid revealing their ethnic identity due to negative reactions and prejudices that exist in society. In addition, institutional anti-Gypsyism impacts the state policies. Besides the legal structure, mass culture, including media, arts, and cultural representations, are also impacted by this phenomenon. The hate speech and anti-Gypsyism racist attitude towards Roma minority was present in Ukraine much longer when the war started, manifested in the pogroms and the murders against Roma people in the past decade. Since the beginning of the war, the anti-Gypsyism didn't disappear. It became even more visible in media representations, both in Ukraine and Europe. On the borders, when people were fleeing the state and in hosting EU bordering countries. In particular, it was seen in shelters for Ukrainians where Roma were put in segregation. The issue of discrimination against Roma in Ukraine is a very sensitive topic nowadays because Russian propaganda using this to prove that Ukraine is a Nazi state. And for this matter, we do communicate with our governmental representatives and trying to influence the situation, persuading the authorities to acknowledge that anti-Gypsyism and fight with it, as in all European countries, which will benefit and prepare the society before joining the European Union in future. Despite the presented anti-Gypsyism, Roma do regard themselves as a integral part of Ukrainian society. And our people joined Ukrainian armed forces as other Ukrainians, together with different ethnic minorities being equal. And Roma activists advocate on international arena for ethnic minorities' human rights. Not just for Roma, but for all minorities, communities, and inclusion of needs of these communities into policy-making processes that are starting right now within the reconstruction of Ukraine after the war. And there are particular vulnerable groups that we highlight, and I will talk about it on the next slide. I would like to mention here that the data used in this slide is extracted from the policy, which is being drafted right now within the preparation for international conference, Recovery of Ukraine and Prospects of Ukrainian Roma Civil Society, that will be happening on 27th of May in Kyiv. And this is a preparatory event for the reconstruction conference happening this June in Berlin. So we highlight several topics and needs where the international community is very welcome to come and help us. And here we outline the support of Ukrainian government, provide technical, financial assistance for Roma-related policy, creation of specific support programs for vulnerable groups who are children and youth, women, Roma genocide survivors, and veterans and returnees who will return from EU countries to Ukraine when the war will finish, hopefully soon. And the Roma cultural heritage itself is a very vulnerable these days because Roma flee in the country. The heritage can be lost following years due to assimilation of the communities in EU countries. So it's really essential to document these days the contribution of Roma communities in the war, to not get the same issue after the Second World War, when we're still trying to prove that we were participating there and we are part of the society. And especially the support of Roma civil society. So now we received a first reaction help from many international organizations, but now we see that the interest is already being less. So that's why we are having event like this today, to attract your attention and to invite you to come and help us. And of course, fighting with anti-Gypsyism in Ukraine and EU countries is our priority. And here we create the narratives, and also we promote others to create more positive narratives about contribution of the Roma in the war. And on this point, I would like to finish and pass the floor to my colleague, Olga Tsuprikova. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. I hope I could be heard very well. And greetings from Kyiv, Ukraine. Achsham Khair, Kalispera. I'm very glad that organizers gave us this brilliant opportunity to shed a bit of a light on the situation of North Azovian Greeks. Well, now you see the two maps on this first slide, and I believe you could easily locate Crimea and Donetsk Oblast in this map of Ukraine, the smaller one. Donetsk Oblast is indicated in the red color. So those are two important areas, Crimea and Donetsk region, important for the history and present days of North Azovian Greek community. As a separate ethnic group, the North Azovian Greeks were formed in medieval Crimea. And then in the late 18th century, they were deported by Russian government to the area of the present-day Donetsk Oblast, where displaced Greeks founded a city of Mariupol and a dozen of villages, which you actually see now on the bigger map on your screen. And you could observe red and green dots on this map. And you could wonder, why are they here, right? So the green dots, they represent the settlements founded by Romans, North Azovian Greeks speaking the Roman language, one of Greek origin. And the red dots indicate the settlements founded by those speaking Urum, the language of a Turkic origin. And thus we are speaking of one ethnic group with two linguistic groups. North Azovian Greeks comprise of Urums and Romans. And while in Ukraine we have many different groups of Greeks, the biggest, the oldest, and the most unique one is the North Azovian Greek community. You know that Donetsk Oblast is the only place of their compact residence, and they are the third biggest ethnic group in this region. It's important to understand, to see the catastrophic situation that North Azovian Greeks are facing right now. Elnara, please go forward to another slide. Here you could see some of the photos just for you to understand how Greeks, North Azovian Greeks were looking like in 19th and early 20th century. You could see the original costumes and the village settings, and also in the urban settlements in this lower right corner, you could see the picture from my family history when the family moved from the village of Constantinople to the present-day Pokrovsk, or Grishene, as it was called back then in the early 20th century. So now we move forward to the recent history of North Azovian Greeks. And this is the ethnic group for which the war started definitely 10 years ago, in 2014. And you know that Russia occupied back then part of Donetsk Oblast, including city of Donetsk and some of the Greek villages, leaving many of those under the Ukrainian government-controlled area in the so-called gray zone, very close to the conflict line. And here you could see a symbolic photo, which I took in 2020 in the village of Sartana, very close to Mariupol. It shows you the rural football area stadium, village stadium. In Romanian, Ilus stands for sun. But our sunny landscapes of North Azovian seashores, they are overshadowed, they are darkened by the sad reality of war, because on the line of the horizon in this photo, you could already see the occupied areas. That means that how close people used to live for this 8 years before the full-scale invasion to the line of conflict. And obviously it affected a lot the reality of this ethnic minority. Since February 24, 2022, the situation could not be described in other words than catastrophic, because we are not speaking about particular buildings, residential areas, or maybe objects, cultural objects that were being destroyed. We are speaking of the whole villages literally erased from the maps due to the Russian invasion, due to the full-scale war, also in the territory of Donetsk Oblast. And the biggest tragedy for me, and also for many of us, is that the exact civilian toll is not known and will never be known. And I could get back to that question during the Q&A if you want, but that's a sensitive issue. That's why I don't want to present now the exact numbers, because we could only speak about certain estimates. Elnara, let's proceed. You would see now some of the photos. Those are the photos from the Greek settlements taken during the period from 2014 and until February 2022. So you see the shillings destroying the residential areas. We move forward. And now you would see the city of Mariupol before the full-scale invasion of Russians. You could see that the city was flourishing, and here I just took you some photos associated with the North Azovian Greek presence in the city. And on the next slide, you would see what happened after the February 24 in 2022. Many of those are not all the photos, of course, but just some of them symbolically highlighting what happened and what is actually happening in the territories occupied by Russians in Ukraine. And then we move forward to my final slide, I believe. Here, I, as a grassroots activist, as a representative of the North Azovian Greek community, I would love to highlight certain issues faced by this community in Ukraine. When we say Greeks in Ukraine, and you could hear Greeks in Ukraine, you should understand that it also refers to a very specific community, North Azovian Greeks. They are residing in the war-torn areas of Donetsk Oblast, and they face very specific situations since 2014. There are two languages that are being endangered, Rum and Romanian. This is not modern Greek language that is being endangered. We, as Crimean Tatars mentioned also, we also have this problem of preserving our languages, and perhaps we are in a much worse situation than Crimean Tatars. Almost all settlements of the North Azovian Greeks are occupied by Russia. Many important items related to our history and culture are either destroyed or stolen by occupiers. And our people are being scattered around Ukraine and Europe. So it's very important to understand that the state of this national community is very fragile. When it comes to recovery plans, and we are talking today about recovery, it's important for the planning to be region-specific and take into account all the possible sensitive issues per each region. And you understand that for the Donetsk region, North Azovian Greeks have to be included. But not only there, because as IDPs, they reside in many regions of Ukraine now. And I would finish with my last sentences here. I would say that the destiny of North Azovian Greeks is being decided right now and the moment that we speak, because the battles for Donetsk Oblast, the battles for Ukraine continue. And the international community has to support Ukraine in order for us to deoccupy these territories and to preserve our territorial integrity for now and for the future generations. I'm very grateful for your attention, and I'm looking forward to exchange during Q&A and breakout rooms. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Elnara, Natalie, and Olha. Wonderful. We have already one question in the chat. You are invited to ask a question. We have about 10 minutes now before we break up into rooms. Could you, Stefan Recker, maybe just read out your question and maybe also tell us to whom this question will be addressed?
Yeah, thank you very much. So my name is Stefan Recker. I'm working with Caritas Germany here in Ukraine. And I thank very much the representatives of the groups we listen to. And I would like to ask them each and individually, do your groups feel generally represented in the current Ukrainian government? I mean, which is a base for any future work, in my opinion. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Shall we proceed in the order we had the presentations, maybe with Elnara, Natalie, and Olha? Is that okay?
Sure,
So
yeah,
I
I
give
already
the
started
floor to you,
speaking, but I
Elnara.
was muted. Yeah, I can quickly answer yes, which is great. But again, this mostly happened after the annexation of Crimea. Before that, it was harder for Crimean Tatars to get into Verkhovna Rada. And apparently, it was even harder to get in Crimean parliament. So being a Ukrainian white politician was easier than being a politician in Crimea because, yeah, there was a huge Russian influence. But currently, as I said, we do not have this problem as we used to have. And so with passing the law on indigenous people, it seems to be getting better and better. But again, because Ukraine itself as a country is suffering, therefore there are bigger problems to solve, you know. So those things are kind of postponed, like things, the issues with national minorities and all that. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Natalie, would you like to answer?
Yeah, I can just very quickly answer that we still have this issue. We do not have representatives of Roma in governments of Ukraine, or if there are some, they do not declare their identity because of this institutional anti-Gypsyism. So, yeah, still work should be done.
And I would comment as well, well, we do have certain people occupying certain positions in the government, but that's the question of how much they identify as North Azovian Greeks. I don't think we have the similar reasons as Natalie mentioned, because I would not say that there is any kind of constraints for the North Azovian Greeks to join the government if they want so. But that's perhaps another thing for our history and the identity to be revisited for the North Azovian Greeks to actually be more vocal on their ethnic group, I would say so. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any more questions? You can just also jump in or raise your hand, and the floor will be yours. Okay. Yes, Mr. Leisler.
Дякую. Я спробую українською, тому що мені притаманно казати і розмовляти німецькою, але з повагою до наших партнерів. Я хотів би, по-перше, подякувати за цю зустріч. Я бачу дійсно не тільки в Україні важливі зміни до відношення до національних.
Are so important, and not only in Ukraine, but I can see that there are serious changes taking place elsewhere, but with our colleagues, together with Ukrainian diaspora and other educational platforms, discuss the development of educational courses, not just for the national communities and ethnic minorities, but for developing partnerships between communities and rebuilding sustainable community partnerships. And my question is, who can we talk to in BMZ and other institutions in order to connect the resources that we have, the educational platforms, the experts, so that we can develop the educational courses to support not only 20 and 30 activists, but we are talking about dozens of thousands of students of online courses. I think it would be very relevant. And as the Council of Germans in Ukraine, I think we could join efforts, because the experience that we have in Ukraine is extremely important for Ukrainian diaspora in Germany, but also it's important for other national communities, ethnic communities. And with great respect towards them, we understand that they could really benefit from trainings in fundraising and other professional skills. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really like your questions and your remarks, and that was our idea, how to sort of combine and join forces and learn from each other's experience, even though, of course, the situation is different for different communities and national minorities and indigenous peoples. Would Ms. Moser be able, or somebody of BMZ, to answer maybe this question?
Happy to. And no, thanks so much for this great question. And so I think a couple of considerations. First of all, of course, we actually launched the German platform for the reconstruction of Ukraine to exactly have this kind of exchange. So I think that's definitely a forum, and as I mentioned in the beginning, we really want to have or provide the opportunity to discuss jointly together. So if you see any options to have also a bit more extensive exchange, also maybe to really bring different actors together through the German platform for reconstruction to really discuss concrete points, we are happy to follow up on that. And then also feel free to reach out to me. I can put my or we can send you my contact details, and we can just have a bilateral exchange to really jointly discuss in more detail. I've also discussed with Stefan Müller already, and it's really like, to make sure that we take this forward together. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much also for your kind offer. I think we will follow up on that.
Only for Mr.
Stefan?
Leisler, probably as additional information, I do it now on behalf of the platform. There's this LinkedIn group of the platform, and I think this is a great opportunity if you want to reach out to different actors. Just write in this LinkedIn group, and then you could really reach a great variety of actors, and this might be a tool to bring people then also together. In the chat was just, I saw it, I think with the left eye, there was a link to this LinkedIn group. Sorry for jumping in.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you also for putting it already into the chat. You know, you will be able to discuss more concrete questions and more into depth in the breakout rooms. Please also make sure sort of to really try to find ways to discuss how the issue of minorities and indigenous peoples can be an integral part also of your projects in Ukraine. That would be wonderful. Yeah, it is, we organize it like this, that you can choose which breakout room you want to step into. And then you have until, okay, now the rooms are.
Have access to the mirror board. So if you have more ideas, you can access them. And yeah, I will just copy probably the links in our chat. So if you have more ideas, you can just put them on sticky notes and leave your name and contact so we can further discuss these ideas. And yeah, I can briefly share what ideas were in our group. So first was the funding, that currently there is not enough funding for from EU, and this is something that we need to address and talk to people, from what I understand, because currently Ukraine cannot obviously provide much of financial support for national minorities issues. So the other idea was to leverage the experience, apologies, from the German minority worldwide, not only in Crimea, because they've done such an amazing job and they have already platforms for online language courses or professional leadership programs. So this is something that can be shared with us and we can build something like that. Then we were discussing the events that should be attended. For example, I've never heard of the International Forum on National Minorities in New York. Like that was the first time I heard it. And then other events like cultural, more like cultural things of documentary screenings or generally film screenings, book presentations, and so on, which has already taken place, but again, not many people are aware. So we need to improve the distribution channel so we can share those things with a broader audience. And yeah, we also spoke about cooperating with German media because I represent Crimea Media Platform and we are on our way to building a Crimean public channel. I didn't have enough time in our breakout room to explain that ATR is more like commercial project and we want to be public. So therefore there's like a little bit different story, but yeah, thank you so much for introducing this idea that we can actually talk to some people in Germany already and work in this direction. Yeah, I think that was it on our end. Sarah, did I miss anything? Okay, Natalie, Olga, do you guys want to share what was going on in your groups?
There is a volunteer, Chinara Majidova, from the Roma group who will share with us insights.
Hello, everyone. Unfortunately, Miro didn't work for us, so we had to gather notes one by one. And what we gathered so far, to be briefly, it's also like common problem. It's about funding, also, of course, about in general international support, which now to strengthen our position for the Ukrainian government. We shared the possibilities of the cooperation or what other organizations are doing within the Ukraine. In our group, we had a representative of the CARE organization, which already works with some Roma NGOs in Odessa, but situation still what we discussed basically is there is not enough support or representation within the country even. And we had another member of Roma community, Janusz, who is from village Kakhovka or city Kakhovka, I'm sorry. and who also told about the problems within the transportation system, because the environmental crisis which is happening now, they're stuck because of the Russia invasion and with the problem of having the passports and leaving the country. So it's a little bit complicated situations there. That's what I noted. If someone wants to add something from our group, please feel free.
Olga, please.
Yeah, and on our end, we were quite a small but enthusiastic group. So we used our precious time in there to clarify some more questions on North Azovian Greeks, because I'm very grateful to people who joined because they were curious to get to know more. And indeed, I understand that North Azovian Greeks require more attention from the international community to be more well known, because apparently still few people know about this group, and it definitely deserves more attention. So thank you everyone who joined.
Thank you very much, Olga. I will, 2 minutes, briefly try to summarize what could be findings, what could be takeaways of this session. First, for us, if I can say, and also to talk on behalf of the 3 community representatives in the Society for Slated People, for us this was a first introduction to minorities and communities in Ukraine, and we are very thankful to the Platform for the reconstruction of Ukraine, for those opportunities, and for all of you that you participated. We would be glad to continue this exchange also in other parts or components of the platform. And our idea always behind was also to look how far we can develop a closer cooperation with the representative or with the national communities and German organizations in the recovery process of Ukraine. If you have any questions, as we mentioned already, there's this LinkedIn group, and you can find us there, and we will be always at your disposal if you're interested in. Next to the government, the Society for Ukraine international community plays a crucial role in this recovery process. Yeah, this could be either advocating the authorities in Ukraine or coming up with good practices on inclusion of the communities. Understandably, the Ukrainian government has different priorities or other priorities at the moment, but lessons learned also from other wars demonstrate that the rights and needs of minorities have to be considered from the very beginning. Otherwise, they will not benefit. It's like that. We saw this in Kosovo, we saw this in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And that's why for us it was very important to have this meeting also to make German organizations aware you have to consider and think about the rights and needs of the communities already now. Despite the horrible war Ukraine is facing, the time is now really to work on this and to include them. At the end, 3 remarks. There should be also now, this was my daughter coming in, there should be also a slide now, if I know well. So if you want to get in touch with one of the speakers or other participants, feel free to join the LinkedIn group. The link will be shared in the chat, or you'll see it also here. There should be also information coming up on upcoming events of the platform. And we would kindly ask you also to give us feedback on the event. There should be also a link which should be shared in the chat, or you see this also scan QR, this code, the code, which you can copy, and then you can also communicate with us. With this, I would like to thank you very much for joining us. And I hope that we will see you again in the one or the other way, and that we will have probably a follow-up meeting where we could talk a bit more concrete about really concrete proposals and ideas or project programs where Roma and other minorities could be really included. And as I said, all the participants are always available for input and discussion. Thank you very much.